Hi, I'm Sue Greenwald with awakenstories.com. How are you? And I'm here today with Deborah Nixon. And she's in the Jedi group that I'm in. And we're going to talk today about how she became awakened. And it seems like it's going to be a super interesting story. Hey, Deborah, how are you?
I'm great. How are you
Excellent.
today?
Excellent. I'm good. I've been busy. It's all exciting. I can feel the energy moving and shifting, and I'm so happy about it. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to ask a whole bunch of questions, kind of like, starting off with your childhood and like what happened. And, you can disclose as much as you're comfortable. And what I like to do is really just show the viewer how, the traumas in this case that you went through helped you to awaken and just kind of get a baseline story out there. And I know you've had a lot of experiences, so we'll probably talk about some of them in more depth in another video, but it seems like this is going to be super interesting. So can you tell me a little bit about your childhood, like how you grew up, maybe even where, if it was a happy home, any religious upbringing, that kind of stuff?
My grandfather was a First Church of God minister. He very strict. Didn't show your feet. You weren't supposed to dance, and no makeup.
Wow.
Was very strict. And then my mother's family was just the opposite. And that grandfather was a 32nd degree Mason. So there was definitely some spiritual clashing going on since I was very small. And you could feel it in the house. There was a lot of, say, poltergeist activity.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So, Deborah, did you live with the grandparents, the grandfathers? Were they in your household?
I ended up living with my grandmother that was married to the minister was Native American.
Okay.
And I ended up living with her when I was 13 because I was removed from the home for child abuse. And that didn't last very long.
Okay, so you lived with her for a short amount of time is what you're saying.
Probably about 6 months or so. Yeah.
Okay. And prior to that, in your childhood home, there was a lot of fighting, a lot of unusual experiences.
Explosive fighting between my mother and father. Yeah.
And child abuse in your home.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. So pick off wherever you want to go.
So I stayed with my grandma until I guess her sister, which was my great aunt, had a baby shower, and we went to the baby shower. I did not know that they had kept me away from her because as a baby, she kept telling them that I was her deceased daughter returned.
All right. Who was, now say this again, because I'm not getting.
This was my grandmother's sister.
Okay.
Aunt Blanche. And Aunt Blanche, I just loved her, but she was missing 4 fingers on one hand due to a farming accident when she was a child.
Okay.
So anyway, we went to her house, and when we got to the house, I didn't realize I'd never been there. I recognized the house. So I ran inside and I said, "Oh, this used to be my bedroom."
Oh, okay.
And I had a full-on memory of living there. Went looking for my bird. And then I went outside and checked out the garden. I was like, I remember the gardener. I used to call him Mr. Green Jeans, and all of these memories came flooding back. And my great aunt grabbed me and she goes, "I knew it was you, Junie. I knew it was you." And so here's this whole very religious family.
Okay.
And they put me in a psychiatric ward for 6 months.
So what you're saying is you had like a past life experience when you went to the home, And
Yeah.
your great aunt actually had a daughter that probably died young, I'm assuming. And she's claiming that it was you.
Yeah, I remember being that daughter. And
Okay.
actually, when I went back in the house with her, this is when they pulled us apart. I hopped up in her lap and I'm rubbing those where she'd had her fingers cut off. I called it rubbing her nubbins. And I said, I'm rubbing your nubbins because they get ghost pains.
Yeah.
And I would rub her fingers, and I remembered. So I sat in her lap and I was just rubbing her fingers. And she said, I knew it was you, baby. I knew it was you. And we just hugged and loved each other. Well, the whole family was just distraught.
So you were 13, and so after that
I was 16.
They put you in.
No, I wasn't. You're right. I was 13 when that
Okay.
happened. You're right.
Okay. So then they put you in a psychiatric center?
Yeah, they put me in a psychiatric ward in downtown Washington, D.C. for 6 months. I was only supposed to be there for 6 weeks for, what they call it? It was for, I guess, just to see how I was doing with all the abuse and the.
Like an evaluation.
Yes.
Okay.
And my father's insurance covered it for 6 months completely. And I remember saying, oh, I'm at my 6 weeks. I'm going home now. And one of the nurses started laughing at me and he goes, honey, you have insurance. You're not going home until the insurance is gone. And it was true.
Okay. So when you're in the psychiatric center, were you treated well or was there abuse there?
They had to lock me in my room because I was a virgin and all the boys wanted to get to me. They actually carried me down to the showers and they kept putting me in hot water and cold water and hot water and cold water, trying to break me down. And well, it's needless to say, one of the nurses finally heard me and came down there and got me. And he told me, he said, I'm sorry. He said, they're wrong, but I have to lock you in your room.
So the orderlies put you in hot and then cold water?
No, the patients. It was co-ed. So there were boys and girls in this place. It was young adults.
All right.
I was the youngest person there.
Okay. And so you're 13 and you're and wow. So the other patients were like kind of semi abusing you.
Yeah, they were teenagers up to like 18, 19 years old.
Yeah.
So they were, well, you're a virgin. And they had all decided one day that they were going to take me to the showers and pass me around. And like a bad party favor. I was not gonna.
Wow. You know, I got to say, when I was 12, I was extremely stupid and innocent. I didn't know anything. Like nowadays, it's on every TV show, but that's crazy. That's crazy. So you were there for, you say, 6 months?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
I spent a lot of time in my room, a lot. So I just dove into the books. I'm pretty smart. So I just dove into books.
Yeah. So where did you live after you got out of the psychiatric center?
Then they kept trying to place me back at home with my parents. So they placed me at home and they put me in another school called The Other Way. And because they didn't have something for children that weren't acting out, I had to go into a drug treatment center. So here I'm in with all of these drug addicts. And I was only 13 and I sure learned why you don't do them really quickly.
So did you live there or did you live with your parents?
I lived with my parents at that time.
But you had to go to the school for drug teenagers, drug addicted teenagers.
Yes, it was called The Other Way. Yeah.
Wow, that's a little odd. And your parents didn't say no?
They wanted them. I was still in court custody.
Oh.
So they didn't really have a say so. And I was just staying with them on a temporary basis to see how it would work. And it didn't work. My mother would punch my teeth through my lips, or my mother would, yeah, it was bad. So they would remove me again and put me somewhere else. A couple of times I ended up spending, I think that time I spent 3 nights at the substation because they didn't have a home for me. Then they put me with my mother's brother for a time, and he put a cigarette out on my face. It was like crazy. I mean, crazy stuff. Nobody should live like I grew up.
How about your brother? Was he like kind of subjected to things similar?
How do I say? He was not abused that way, but it was still a crazy house, a crazy home. He and I agreed later on when I ended up, I ended up, out of all of those times of being placed with my mother, and then my father and mother split. And then after Dad left, it was really bad. And I ended up in a nuclear engineer's home. And it was really nice for a couple of years. So when I hit 16, I was the valedictorian of my 10th grade class. And I was so proud of myself. But when I hit 16, he wanted more than just to be my foster dad. Okay. And I wasn't going there. And I told him, I said, hey, these are the rules. My pants don't come off, and your hand never touches my ass. So he took a ruler and he beat me from the crooks of my knees to the middle of my back.
Oh, okay.
And I walked into school that next day, and I went into the principal's office, and I said, I need to be emancipated. And she said, what are you talking about? And I dropped my pants. I showed her where I dropped my pants. And I said, this is why. And she said, oh, let's call social services. And I said, let's not. That's how I got here.
Right. Okay. Okay.
So I actually had some help. I went ahead and got my GED while I was a runaway. I left. I packed my little bag and I left.
So you left this guy's home. Where did you live?
Actually, I hitchhiked to Ocean City, Maryland. And I met a biker who said,
I'm sorry.
You laughed. He said, I have a job for you. And I said, really? He said, my mother is an alcoholic. I love her, but if you could come and take care of her, there is a room off the garage. You can stay at my house and just take care of her. When she gets up, let her think that she cleaned. Just get up early, clean the house. Don't let her know that you're doing it, but she's going to kill us if she keeps giving us raw sausage and spaghetti sauce.
Ooh, okay. So you kind of live there for a while.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
In the meantime,
go ahead.
In the meantime, I don't know how. I had to have been an active daddy because my father found me. Oh. And he asked me if I wanted to come home and finish growing up. And at first I was a little scared because he had been kind of violent too. But I went to visit him and I ended up moving back home. And I did finish growing up with my father and my brother.
Okay. Okay. And then what happened? So during this time, so you're, like say 16, 17-ish at this point, you've had a variety of spiritual, psychic, past life types of experiences, probably through your whole life, is my assumption.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, let's fast forward a little bit past there. You grow up, and then what happens?
Oh, goodness. Well, I'll tell you, when I was in the nuclear engineer's house, as I was leaving, I found a notebook because I was looking for my birth certificate. I found a notebook in his desk where he'd been keeping notes on me, talking about how he let me have beers or he let me get high. And then he would ask me about stuff I should have no idea about. And I told him all about it.
Oh, so
I
your
thought
psychic experiences, that kind of stuff.
about how I would answer the phone before it rang.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. So did you keep that notebook?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So what happened after you grew up at your dad's? Did you continue to live there? And then what happened?
I stayed with my dad until I met my ex-husband.
Okay.
And he was kind of an unsavory character, but I thought he would grow up. He was a biker type.
There's no surprise there, though, because you came from an abusive household, and that's probably what your consciousness would allow, right? At the time.
So.
Yeah.
Well, we both, I drank a little bit too much, and so did he. And
Yeah.
then I got pregnant. And I was ready to not even tell him because he's, like I said, he was an unsavory character.
Right, right.
And I said, well, that's not right. So I told him, and we got married. And I had my son. And then it ended up being, how do you say, a difficult birth. I ended up having to have an emergency cesarean. And I wasn't supposed to have another child for at least 2 years. And I got pregnant with my daughter.
Oh, okay.
Pretty quickly. There's like 16 months between them.
Okay.
When I refused to go to the doctor until I knew it was beyond
the third month or so.
Beyond them being able to take my baby legally.
Right.
So when I went to the doctor, she says, well, what are you here for? I said, well, I'm pregnant. And she says, well, what makes you think that? And I said, believe me, I'm pregnant. She said, well, you're right, you are. So she checked me, and I was pregnant. She's, you're at least 4 months pregnant. And I said, yeah, I know. And she said, well, you can't carry this baby to term. And I said, well, I've already dreamed about the baby. The baby's fine. I'll be fine. The baby's fine. Daddy put the baby there, and you're not taking my baby.
Right.
So we had some stand on your head fights about you're not taking my baby. And I carried her full term. It was a struggle, but I carried her full term. And then the ex-husband and I were buying a house, our first house. And I can remember going in, I guess it was back labor. And I'm telling you, he was drunk as a skunk. He drove between the lines. He kept it between the gullies going home. So by the time we get home, because we were out in the middle of nowhere building this house in the country, we got back to what's Stafford, Virginia. It was still a half hour away from the hospital, and I had no phone.
Oh.
So I had to find a neighbor to call his brother and have his brother take me to the hospital.
Okay. And so you delivered your daughter.
Yeah, okay. I did.
And it's pretty hard having 2 little kids at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm assuming you did a lot of that alone.
I did.
Okay. And so then what happened?
Well, the dream I had about the little girl,
right?
It actually came to pass. I had dreamed myself running through tall grass with a German Shepherd dog and 2 little children with flying kites. And it actually happened. I was like, oh, this was the dream.
Are you sure that's not Little House on the Prairie?
No, it was just at the park.
Okay, I'm just teasing.
Some tall grass. There I am running with the German Shepherd dog and these 2 little kids.
Right.
And I was so glad that I still had her with me.
Right. Okay. So your dream came true.
That did come true.
So during this time frame, you're still having visions, intuition, psychic episodes, whatever you might want to call it.
Oh yeah, he used to get really angry with me because I'd tell him, I said, if you don't slow down right now, you're going to get a ticket. And he goes, there's no place around. and then suddenly the car behind us that was unmarked would, and he'd get a ticket. And
Yeah.
he'd go, how did you know that? You, like, he thought I made it happen.
Right.
I didn't. I just
Yeah.
knew it was going to.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
All right. So what else happened during that time frame?
Actually, because of all of the, the poltergeist type activity that had gone on in my house as a child and then continued on through my life, I started getting into spiritual warfare. And it became very, very important to me because I get home from work one day and the ex-husband was drinking heavily and he's wielding a knife at me. He was 6'2". I'm 5 foot. I'm 5 foot tall. So here's this 6'2" biker with a knife, a hunting knife, like you'd fillet a deer with.
Yep.
Pointing it at me, telling me how he's going to kill himself. I was like, well, why are you pointing the knife at me? And something rose up in me, a boldness. And I reached behind his head, rolled him in the floor, and took the knife from him and gave it to the children and told them, throw it behind the water heater where he can't get it again, please.
Okay.
And then I hear the same voice come out of him that came out of my mother. Not everybody can be perfect like you. And I was like, what is this? Shades of my mother. What is this? And that's when I started really looking at spiritual warfare.
So you are saying basically your mother was possessed.
I think so.
As was your ex-husband. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep.
All right. Now he had, we'll call it dark behavior. What other instances did you have that might support that?
He drank to excess and then he would threaten to kill himself or kill others. He would forget to come home a lot. Of course, that was just bad behavior, but the dark behavior, he was very, very abusive. When I would not come pick him up because he'd been drinking, I told him, I said, call me before you're drunk, I'll come get you. If you've been drinking, I'm not taking part in that. I'm going to hang the phone up. So I'd hang the phone up. Then he'd call me back and tell me how he's going to cut me in little pieces.
Oh.
When he got there.
And the kids witnessed this when you fought in person, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, and he actually had slit his wrist, and I found him in the bathroom at one point, and I called the ambulance and the police, and they said, well, he's still coherent and we can't take him against his will. I said, you mean he can do this in front of my kids and you guys won't take him out of here? And
they just didn't come out and try to help him?
They came and they told me we can't take him because he refuses to go.
Did they bandage him up?
No.
Oof. Okay.
They left him sit there. He was combative, so they left him there in the bathroom bleeding.
Wow. Okay, so what happened then? He lived.
He lived. I wrapped him up. It was like, I thought they were going to come take this. I thought they would at least put him in observation for 24 hours or something, right? But that's not what happened. And it was when he would drink, you never knew what you were going to get.
Right.
It was just dark. And if he wasn't drinking, there was a 5-year period where he did not drink. And he was a decent man. But the minute that he was native, the minute you gave him fire water, he was not okay.
Okay. All right. So, back to the possession, like you heard a voice come out of him that one time.
Oh yeah.
Did you hear that kind of voice multiple times?
Only when he was really drunk.
Okay. And that wasn't his voice.
No, that was not his voice. Then I knew what I was dealing with.
Okay.
And it was funny because it happened during that recession where everybody was having trouble finding a job. And I was having trouble finding a job. So I got on my knees and I told Daddy, I said, like, yeah, I got to find a job. I have
Right.
to provide for my kids.
Right.
And I ended up bathing dogs for a grooming shop. And that lasted for a little while, and I learned pretty much how to groom. So the next job, I ended up working with women who were spiritual warriors.
Ooh.
And I used to watch the shop while they would go to Africa.
Oh.
So they used to go to Africa and they worked on demonic possessions. That
Okay.
was mostly what they did. They called it prayers of deliverance.
So were they like missionaries, like
They
trying to
were,
convert people?
well, they were missionaries, but they didn't belong to a church.
Okay.
There was no organized religion with them. And I asked them, how do you have the money to do this? And she says, when we're supposed to go, the money shows up.
Oh, okay. All right. So did you work with them or did you just hang out with them?
Both.
All right. And did you start to learn more?
I did. I learned how to stand against the demons.
Okay.
And I learned how to kick them out of my house and other people's houses.
Yeah. Okay.
And I learned how to what they called travail, which means to stand in the gap for someone who's unable to pray
Right.
or to request for themselves.
Okay. Okay.
They're unable
So
to connect.
why would they go all the way to Africa to do that when I'm assuming there's enough stuff going on here in the US?
They did it here too, and I actually went with them. They used to go and minister to ministers. They would
Okay.
show up at church, and they took me with them. We would all go together, and she would take. Usually, she was what they called a. Even though she didn't belong to a church, she would go and talk to the ministers to get them back on track. If there
Okay.
was something worth redeeming in them, she would suggest to them that they come meet with her. And most of the time they did. They would go and talk to her.
Okay.
The churches she went to anyway. They weren't like these super mega churches. Usually it would be a little small church and she would talk to the pastor and he'd go have a meeting with her. And usually the prayers of deliverance were to seal you up from, how you say, generational curses.
Okay. Okay.
Or for things you did that left open places in you for you
Right.
to be attacked.
Did they charge for that service?
Nothing.
Okay. All right. So how long were you hanging with this group?
Oh, I think with them, I was probably with them about 3 years.
Okay. So you learned a fair amount, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Now you've already had all sorts of psychic, intuitive, premonition, past life types of experiences without anything, even as a young child. And then they kind of like helped you to understand things a little bit more, I'm assuming.
Well, when things would happen when I was a child, my father would take the Bible and he'd just read. And nothing happened. It just got worse.
Right.
These ladies told me how to stand and how to pray or actually request for Daddy's protection. How to request these things leave your home because you do have the ability to tell them to get out.
Right. Right.
You
Okay.
do have the ability.
Okay. So you're with them for 3 years, and then what happened?
Well, then I started having visions about New Mexico.
Okay, so you were in like Virginia then.
Yep.
Okay.
So and I knew something was about to happen to my daughter. It was like a life or death situation that was presenting itself, and I knew I had to get her out of there, and that for some reason I needed to come to New Mexico.
Okay.
So packed the house, sold the house via the fax machine back then. That
Ooh.
was back in like 95. I had an attorney set up as a what do you call it? So they could
Power of attorney.
power of attorney, so they could
Right.
take care of the selling of the house.
Now, were you still married, or did you get divorced
I
at that
was
point?
still married.
Okay. And how did your husband like you, like moving away, and like he didn't go with you, did he?
Oh, he did. That was the
Ooh.
fleece. I laid a fleece before the Lord. That was what I had offered, because I didn't want this to be that I had decided this and made everyone part of it. I didn't
Right.
want it to be something that I had
Right.
created. So my fleece was that if we moved to New Mexico, that he would rent the truck and he would be the one that loaded it and let's go,
All right.
because we both worked for the same company. So I
Okay.
was still working, and he took off and rented a truck and loaded it.
Oh,
I was like, well, I guess that means we're going.
okay. All right. And have you ever been to New Mexico before that, physically?
No,
Okay. So you just like felt like going. Where'd you end up in, like, you were just drawn to go?
my mother lived in Albuquerque
Okay.
at the time. So we came to Albuquerque. I said, yeah, I'd like to get to know my mom. It'd be kind of nice. And we bought a house like I think a block and a half from where my mom's house was,
Okay.
because I hadn't seen her since I was very young. Remember, she was my estranged mother.
Yes.
So within 3 months, the little girl that my daughter rode the bus with, the two sisters, the Say's daughters, they were abducted from the bus and murdered.
Oh, from the bus that your daughter rode.
Yes.
Now, you said that there was a life-threatening situation you saw for your daughter. Was this, so how did she get, like, how was she avoided? How did she avoid that situation?
Because I moved her far away from there. I moved her to Albuquerque.
You mean that's back in Virginia that happened?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, oh my golly, how horrible.
Those girls lived a mile from my house. They were the next stop on the bus.
It's horrible. Horrible. So because you moved, your daughter was saved. Okay. Sorry to hear that. That's a horrible story.
Well, and I only found out because I saw it on the news.
Wow. Okay.
And I was like, that must be what I kept feeling.
Right.
Somebody was watching my daughter. And
yeah, that's horrible. Crazy. Yeah. And so you move to Albuquerque, you get a house near your mom. How does that go?
oh, well, my mother had married a man who was 13 years younger and had children the ages of my children.
Okay.
And they're all in high school together.
Okay.
Mid-school and high school. And then her new husband was very, very, he didn't like people of color, any color. He was
so bigoted, you would say.
very, very bad about it.
Probably other races, other nationalities, the whole thing, right?
My ex-husband was very native.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so anytime that there was any kind of strife in the family, he's calling my kids badass Indians.
Oh, okay. So not cool.
No, not cool
Okay.
at all.
All right.
And yeah, so anyway, I guess my mother was not a free spirit. He had given her, I mean, she had a very restrictive life. She wasn't allowed to leave the house after dark.
Ooh.
Yeah. And so I guess I caused problems for her because I was like, Mom, do you want to go to Kmart? They're having a blue light special. They're doing midnight madness over at Kmart. Let's go.
Yeah.
And then when I found out she couldn't go out after dark, I was like, oh, okay.
Now, would you say your mom was still possessed at this point?
You can still hear it. It's definitely still there.
Is she alive now?
Oh yeah. She moved away without even saying goodbye.
Oh.
The last time I saw her, I was in her kitchen and I was sitting on a stool at the back of the kitchen and he was sitting by the window, like a little breakfast nook table thing. And her husband, he looks at me and he goes, I can't believe a daughter that would run away and just leave their mother. I'm thinking, she didn't tell them. She didn't tell them. She never told them. She didn't tell them I was taken away. She told them I was belligerent and ran away.
Oh, man.
Well, I didn't blow her cover. Why would I do that? What would it prove?
Yeah, exactly.
So I just left her in peace. And I couldn't go back there anymore. And I talked to her on the phone a few times. I found out she moved, without saying goodbye. And I talked to her on the phone a couple of times and you could still hear it. I mean, she'd say things like, you never lived up to your potential. Like, okay, thanks, Mom.
Wow. Okay. All right. So then your mom moves, and that must have been a shock / pretty sad, but logically you understand it, but it's still emotionally, sad. It's sad. So then what happened?
So then the ex-husband, it became, after I moved here, I was on fire. I needed to know more and understand more. I took on like 3 Bible studies at one time because I needed to understand the spirit and how it moved and how that I could walk in the spirit. I also played in a band that would go to the prison and play for the prisoners.
Okay.
So every Saturday night I had a captive audience.
Funny joke.
So it was great. I really enjoyed that part of it.
Right.
But the further that I got closer to spirit, to Daddy, the more alcoholic my ex-husband became. And it was to where there was a couple times, I don't know how he came home on that motorcycle. He was riding a motorcycle drunk as a skunk. He pulled up in the driveway. He fell over in the driveway and I heard him yelling for me. So I'd have to go out there and pick the bike up.
Oh, that's so heavy. How did you do that?
I had help.
Yeah, I've tried to pick a bike up before. Not easy.
I picked it up and I rolled it in the garage, but I had to get it off of him so he could get up off the pavement, right? So it's just like as time went by, the worse he got. It was to where I couldn't even go to the band practices. I used to play at the church as well. And it was just awful.
So when you left the house, his behavior would worsen. Okay. All right. Then what happened?
Well, he became abusive enough that it was time for me to stand up and cut bait.
Right.
So I had grown up without a family. I really wasn't very good at this. I sent myself to counseling for a brief time. And then I came home and I told him, you need, 3 strikes, you're out. He
Right.
started using meth and I could smell it, the chemically smell. And I knew, because I could see it. I knew what was going on.
Right.
I walked in the garage. I opened up his toolbox and here was this glass pipe in the top of it because I could see it. And I flung it at the wall and I told him, I'm a 3 strikes, you're out kind of girl. This is the first one. 3 strikes and I'm filing for divorce. We will or we will not call the police depending upon the situation. And I said,
So wait a minute. He tried to kill himself. He did all this other stuff and you didn't count those as any strikes.
I had not.
Okay.
So crazy, right? I know.
Okay. All right. Just want to get the story
I
right.
think I just had to get strong in the spirit.
Yeah. I get it.
So I told him,
All right. So then what happened after that? The first strike was checked off.
yeah, so that was the first strike.
Okay.
Second strike, my daughter called him to go and get drugs.
Oh.
And I heard the phone call. And I said, what is that? He said, well, I have to go protect her. And I said, from what? From drugs? So we got into a knockdown, drag out over that. And I still wasn't where I could get him out. It wasn't here yet. It had to be, I had to get the heart and the head together.
Right.
So my son actually had moved home by this time, the third strike.
So basically both kids are like young adults and they're out of the household.
Yes.
Okay.
My daughter was 19, I think.
Okay. So she wanted to go get drugs and she asked her dad to go help her.
Yeah.
Oof. Okay.
Yeah. So we get to a Saturday and I wake up in the morning and I remember looking at him and he was actually asleep in the recliner in the den. He was in the den. And I can remember looking at him, he was emaciated, he just had gotten so skinny from doing the drugs. And when I looked at him, I saw them. I saw the drugs. I didn't have to look for them. I knew exactly where they were. I saw them in his robe pocket in the bedroom. So I walked back to the robe and I reached in the pocket and there was the drugs.
Okay.
So I walked back out and I'm standing in the kitchen a distance away from him. And I said to him, this is 3 strikes. And I'm holding them up. And I said, 1 or all of these things 3 of these things are going to happen today. I said, you can leave nice or you can leave ugly. How do you want to go? I said, nice means I put these down the sink and you just leave. Ugly means I call the police. How do you want to do this? Because you're leaving here today. He pulled a gun out of the chair. And he's waving the gun around.
I was just going to say how courageous that you had to be, and then this happened. So go ahead with the gun.
I had no idea that he had a gun in the chair, but he's waving this gun around. And I was like, and I'm talking to Daddy. Like, when you get to the end of your rope, because I had lived in fear, he'd beat me. There had been all kinds of craziness had gone on. But when you finally decide that you're not living that way anymore, even if it costs you your life, you are not living like that anymore. So be it. You make a stand. And he had to leave. The next thing I know, he tells me, so I've got I've got to get my stuff. And he starts pulling pot plants out from underneath the house that I didn't know were there.
Oh,
He pulled a child's garden of grass from under the house.
okay.
So he takes his plants and he leaves. So I at this point I went ahead and got a restraining order because he was coming back to hurt me.
Right.
And so he left because he was afraid he was going to get in trouble for having those plants here.
Right.
So he did come back, and I did have to use a restraining order. And then I got all of his things together. And the funny thing was, I didn't expect it, but after I was married to him for 23 years, when I saw him in the driveway, even though I had a police escort bring him to get his things, my whole body started to shake like a leaf. I had no idea that you had physical memory like that, and that I had been so traumatized.
Of course.
So I kept myself in counseling for a little bit longer, and I was very lonely. And I did not find my mate until, it was funny, after I wasn't lonely anymore. I really wasn't lonely. I was okay being alone.
Okay.
Daddy.
So you found some inner peace after all of that.
Well,
I've got to think after all that trauma and abuse you've had your whole life, being alone was probably like a godsend, really.
it was interesting.
You have to have an adjustment period, but you found some peace.
Well, I found myself like looking at the clock, and when it would get around 5 o'clock, when it was time for him to come home, I'd find myself wondering where he was, but I wasn't wondering where he was. I was wondering where he was. Was he going to come hurt me? And I was like, oh my God, all these years.
Yeah.
I was wondering where he was. And then, of course, the poltergeist activity, it hit one night, and it sounded like I had a freight train running through my hallway, and it was beating on my doors, and the bedroom door was shaking. And I had my I worked for an alarm company. I had my alarm remote in my hand. I kept trying to set my alarm off. Obviously, people had broken in, and they were gonna. Oh.
So it sounded like a freight train, and things were shaking.
It sounded like there was a whole bunch of people that broke in the house.
Okay.
And then I realized there wasn't people.
Okay.
I made myself get up out of that bed, open that door, and I marched out in that hallway, and I told them to get out of my house.
Right.
Get out now. This
Right.
house serves the Lord. Choose you this day. I choose. Get out.
Right.
And I opened the door, and the curtains went whoosh.
Wow. And so your training with those ladies years before had come in handy.
Oh, I'd say so.
Yeah. All right. Wow. Okay. So you're alone. You've got PTSD. Of course, maybe that term wasn't as popular then, but you're recovering from trauma. You're learning to have inner peace and enjoy your life, if you will, a little bit. Then what happened?
I was house poor because I was still paying for my house. Most women, I understand, that go through this lose everything.
They do.
I filed bankruptcy and I reclaimed my house. So I was house poor because I was still paying those bills.
Right.
And I was online, and I was in the native chat room, and this lovely gentleman started speaking to me, and he gave me his phone number, and he said, if you'd like to call me sometime. He didn't ask me for my number. He gave me his. And when I called him, he was very respectful. And then he came over. Actually, when I called him, I remembered him.
Oh.
Remembered his voice. I've never met him, but I remembered him. I had another past life, and I remembered him being my husband.
Wow.
And I was like, is it possible that I could already be in love with this person?
Mm.
But how could this be? I haven't even met him. So he lived 2 hours away. He drives to Albuquerque. We go to dinner, and I knew I was in love with him. Oh my God, he put me in his arms and I just melted. I was like, oh my, it's him. It's him.
Okay.
I didn't
Okay.
recognize the body. It wasn't the same body,
Right.
but it was him. I knew it was him. And we're still together. And it's been
Yeah.
17 years.
That's amazing. Now, I talked to him, whatever day it was, and he said that when you first hugged, that all sorts of past life memories came to you, like your full recognition came to you.
We actually, for about the first 3 months after he moved in, we continued reconciling that past life. We were
Mm.
Native. He was the chief's son. And he was leading a hunting raid for two-legged deer.
Oh, okay.
And I was pissed off about it. And I was telling him so. And I said, you know, this is not okay. And you guys don't want the women to hunt. And something's going to happen. And then the women won't know how to hunt. And you guys won't be here. And well, they never came back.
The whole hunting party.
And I was so mad at him. I was so pissed off at him.
Okay.
And we would wake up in the morning still having the argument.
Oh, wow.
For
Okay.
3 months, this went on, reliving it in our sleep.
Right. Okay.
And I finally got up and I said, I was so mad at you. He said, but I died. I said, I know. That's why I was so mad at you.
Yeah. Because you kind of knew what was going to happen back then, too.
Mhm.
And I'm assuming that was in New Mexico, the territory of whatever it was back then. Probably in the 1800s.
I think so.
Okay.
It was before the occupation.
Okay. So you guys met and you knew you had this past life. You reconciled it. You had other past lives together. I'm quite sure of it.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And have you seen those as well?
Bits and pieces, yeah.
Right. Okay.
And children. And yeah, there was.
Good. Good.
And I could tell you that I'm more in love with him now than I've ever been. So.
And so I love hearing that story. It makes me feel so happy when people find each other like that and you were just somehow drawn to him. And it's beautiful.
We both said the same prayer that night. I was asking for if there was anybody out there that Daddy had made for me, would he please let me meet him? Even if it was early. I know you're not supposed to meet them early, but that I was so lonely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been through so much. Could he please let me meet this person?
Right. Right.
Floyd
Wow.
I think Floyd said the same prayer the same night.
Right.
And we met.
So you're still in Albuquerque area?
Yeah.
Okay. And so you said 17 years you've been together. And what's happened of significance during that time? Like spiritually, psychically, however you want to define it. Yeah. I mean, that's a hard question to answer 17 years worth, but.
Well, I could give you a brief though.
Okay.
Floyd was basically Native in ceremonies, and I had been kind of leaning toward the Christian side of things and not learned my Native heritage. It wasn't really allowed. So I went and met with traditional teachers and learned about some of my Native heritage. And we went to a lodge, a women's lodge, actually, I went to. And it was shortly there, I saw something at the lodge. I saw what they call lightning beings.
Lightning beings?
Lightning people, yeah. They're like,
okay.
They look like lightning.
Okay.
And he was dancing around the fire, and I saw him. I was like, this is really this really cool. I saw this lightning beam. And it was probably, I think 3 weeks to a month later, I was watching one of these blue lightning storms, just beautiful, go across the sky. And I was sitting in the den with the sliding glass doors open. A lightning ball came down out of the sky. You're going to think I'm making this up. I know.
No?
A lightning ball came down out of the sky under the awning. My patio has an awning, and came into the room. And when it got to be about here, I put my hand up and it went and blackened the palm of my hand.
Oh,
And Floyd's hair is standing straight up, and he goes, "Are you okay?" And I said,
so was this from like a bolt of lightning up, like there was a thunderstorm and a little fragment comes down and boom, goes into your hand? Is that how it worked?
like a plasma ball or what? I don't know what it looked like, a ball of lightning.
Okay.
And it came right up in the house, and the whole surface of my hand turned like soot, black.
Okay. Was it painful?
No.
Okay.
And I went like this, and I said, "I think I got a charge out of that." I started laughing, and he goes, "No, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine."
Did Floyd have long hair and did it go wild?
Yes.
Yeah.
His hair-
Okay.
The static in the air was thick.
Okay.
So that was one thing that happened. And then there was my daughter. She had picked an abusive man, much like her dad, and she was at this time pregnant and not too far from where we live. She was like 45 minutes away. So she calls me and she says, "I'm pregnant and he's hitting me." And I said, "We gotta go get her." As we don't want to engage this fight. We don't want to get in the middle of it. Let's just get her and get out. So I told Floyd, men tend to want to banter. So I was like, don't engage him, please. Let's just get her and get out. So it's way out in the country, and it's, dirt roads and stuff. So I drove up in my car, threw the door open. She jumped in the back seat. I'm driving, and Floyd's sitting beside me. And we started down the road, and he comes after me in his truck, and he's trying to run me off the road. And I looked at Floyd, I said, "It's time." And I put my hand up like this. He put his hand up with me, and we asked Daddy to stop him. And all of a sudden, it looked like that truck hit a wall of jello.
Wow.
And stopped right there. It stopped. And we just drove home. But it was amazing to me how quickly Daddy he just stopped him right there.
Right. Wow, that's an amazing story.
And we were able to bring her home safely. Of course, she went back, but
yeah,
it saved us from going off the road.
right.
And then my most favorite story was Floyd he was sitting in the den, and he kept laughing, and he was laughing, and he kept laughing, and I hear this other person laughing. And I said, "What are you doing? Who are you talking to?" He says, "I'm talking to Jesus."
Wow.
And I said, "Well," he said, "Yeah, I'm talking to Jesus." He said, "I'm talking to King Smarty."
Yeah.
When
was this?
I'm listening to King Smarty. This is years ago.
Okay.
I can't even tell you how long ago. I'm not sure, but it's been quite a number. Actually, we were on calls with Smarty in the Wayback Machine, and then we lost track of him.
That's what you were telling me.
Yeah. And there was somebody named Zorro that would be on the calls, and I don't know. Anyway, we lost track of the calls, and then Floyd says he thinks that Smarty found him. I was like, that's not surprising, actually. So here we've come full circle.
Right.
And, there's a wholeness in my life. My kids are still not, awake yet.
Right.
But we request for our children daily.
Right.
both Floyd and I together.
Yeah.
And it's amazing the bond that we've formed over time.
Well, it sounds to me you had an extremely rough start, and you had a lot of trauma and struggle and all that, but you basically, and I don't mean to make it sound light and fluffy, but you've come out stronger, your eyes are open, and now you have a good life, right?
The way that I would put it is that I have become so strong
Right,
with Daddy
right,
that I can be gentle.
right. I love that.
And that's, I told Floyd, that is the sure sign of strength in a person, when they're gentle.
Right, right. Right. And you don't have to be aggressive and beat somebody up to be strong.
No.
And actually to stand up to somebody that's waving a gun in your face or going to beat you up, or he has a knife in his hand, you have to be very strong to do that. Just like with your foster father, you have to be very strong to basically run away at that age. I mean, like, you have no money, no job. There's so many factors in it. You have been strong your whole life. And all of these experiences, although I'm going to say they were negative and heavy, have made you really strong. And you obviously have such a loving heart. So you've come through and not gone to the dark side. That's amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Any other little last minute things you want to say about your life, or what you might recommend for people that might need inspiration or ideas on how they become, like, we don't always have to go through the heaviness to become awakened. Any ideas for someone that might be newer on the path that you might, share with them?
Honestly,
Yeah.
my biggest growth time was when I admitted that I was blind. And I asked Daddy to show me the way. I said, I see, I'm blind.
Right. So it's kind of like a surrender moment.
Yep.
When, yeah, you see, we always think we can control every aspect of our life, in our brain. We plan things out, we do all these physical actions and whatever it might be, but it never ever to infinity goes to plan, does it? So you have to roll with it sometime, and in your case you just kind of let it go and ask for help, it sounds like.
Well, and then there was the day I was getting ready for band practice, and I was going to church, and I had decided that, no matter what was going on, my kids were running away, there was craziness going on, I was going to go and stand for Daddy, and I was going to be up there and play my 12-string guitar like I had.
Right.
And I realized that I had been through so much that I was numb. My heart was numb. I really wasn't feeling much anymore. I
Right.
didn't feel anything except for dull pain.
Yeah.
And I asked Daddy for a heart transplant.
Wow. Way back then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 I told him, I said, I need a heart transplant, Daddy.
Did you feel it? Did you get it? And did you feel it and know it?
I felt it. I knew it when
Yeah.
it happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't get it right away. It wasn't there
Right.
long after, but
Right.
because you're still tender, you still have a tenderness, and
Right.
there's
Right.
a childlike tenderness that comes with it.
Right. And you clearly have that now.
Oh, definitely.
And I'm so happy, because this story could have gone horribly awry. There's so many points.
Could have just started doing drugs with the ex-husband and sunk into nothingness.
Totally. And, for those that don't know, alcohol, a little alcohol is okay, but when you frequent dark places and with alcohol and drugs, you're literally letting spirits into your energetic field. They attach, they feed on you, they influence you and manipulate you. So that's why, it's not surprising that your husband did have those dark entities
Well, Native Americans tend to be sensitive to that.
Yeah.
What do they call it? Firewater.
Yeah. I know that like there's a high amount of alcoholism among Native Americans, and I'm not sure exactly why that is. Like,
I actually studied about why.
right.
And it's because the alcohol, where you get dopamine fits perfectly into a receptor. Well, the alcohol fits into those receptors. So the Native Americans that are genetically predisposed get a euphoric high that nobody else gets. And they can drink more and not fall down. Yeah, like they could drink enough that somebody might be alcohol poisoned and go to the hospital and it won't kill them.
So they basically have some sort of a genetic, their genetics are slightly different. Is that what you're saying?
I'm telling you that for dopamine, they make just enough. And however the body is made, those receptors pick up alcohol in place of dopamine.
Okay. Okay.
So they have really large receptors because they make just enough dopamine. And so there is a difference.
Okay. Okay.
Americans.
I did not know that. All right. Anything else you'd like to say before we close?
I'm so excited about our future.
Right.
I'm so happy to be a part of what's about to happen.
To unfold. Right. 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 Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story. I know it hasn't been easy for you. My heart was so sad when you told me most like 3/4 of it. And like I said, it's made you strong. It's made you smart. You have your values, and you've stuck to your belief system, and you've grown. So I'm so happy that you're finding the light and not the dark.
Well, and think about it now.
Yeah.
It could help anybody that was looking for it.
Right. Right. And sometimes, like I said, people might listen to this video and they're going through a hard time, or they have these experiences. Hopefully what you've said will inspire them or educate them in some small way. So that's really the hope for doing these videos.
There you go.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Deborah. I really appreciate it. And I thank you so much for being bold enough to share your story.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you. Talk to you again soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.